Hey everybody, welcome to the Addiction Unlimited podcast, where you get to learn everything you want to know about addiction and recovery. I'm your host, Angela Pugh, co-founder of Kansas City Recovery, life coach, and recovering alcoholic. To learn more about me, you can listen to episode 0 on your podcast app or find us on the web at addictionunlimited.com. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Addiction Unlimited podcast. I'm your host, Angela Pugh. We are recording in my home away from home, sunny Hollywood, California. Although it's not very sunny yet. It looks like it's getting there. Our guest today, I'm so excited about this. I just met Amy. She's fantastic. She's so much fun. Amy Dresner. She's a former professional stand-up comic. And she has this fabulous book I can't wait to read called My Fair Junkie, a memoir of getting dirty and staying clean. And that is available on audiobook too, which I just found out, which is my favorite. So I will definitely be getting it as soon as we are done with this podcast. So Amy, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi,
and doing
Angela.
this.
Thanks for having me. It's really awesome to meet you in person.
I'm glad I'm here too.
Yeah, right. Glad you're here and I'm not doing this podcast by myself.
So I was thinking with your personality, you should have a podcast.
Oh God. And like everyone has a podcast. I don't have time for a podcast. I've been doing a lot of book promotion and a lot of podcasts like yours. Other writers are like teasing me. They're like, are you on a podcast tour? What have you done? Like 30? They're like, it's embarrassing. So I actually made a meme of Colonel Puff Puff, my cat, going, oh, you're on another podcast for your book?
Podcast.
Please tell me more.
So what other stuff have you been doing promoting the book? Not just podcasts.
Interviews, readings. I did a couple book fairs.
What are the best places for people to find your book?
I'd say Amazon. It's in Barnes & Noble online. It's on Target online. Which is,
nice.
But Barnes & Noble in stores, online. Everyone seems to be buying it on Amazon. It's on IndieBound. It's on...
I think that Amazon is probably going to own the world pretty soon.
Right?
If they keep doing same day delivery, like I will never leave my house to shop again.
Yeah, that was the problem, I think, with the book was them trying to push for pre-sales. Like addicts don't want deferred gratification. You know what I mean? So there I am like pushing like, but pre-order my book. It's like 3 months away and everyone's like, no, like they want,
wait until I can order it.
Addicts want instant gratification.
Yeah, even like me with audiobook.
There you go, right?
I love it.
My publisher's never seen something like that with my book. They've seen a 1-to-1 ratio of the paper of the hardcover to the audiobook because people hear me on a podcast and they want to download it immediately.
Yes.
Exactly.
And the other part of it is audio. We were talking about this a little bit before we started recording. Audio is so easy because I can hit play on my phone and I can walk out of my house and it'll play.
Right.
When I walk in the house, It pops up on my Bluetooth speaker. When I get in my car, it pops up on my car.
Well, you're very electronically organized. No, I'm a Jew. I'm a Jew. Yeah, we're not tech people in general. Speaking for myself, not other Jews. I don't know. Yeah, we're not that great at that stuff. Except when I was a tweaker, I had some good stuff at electronics.
Well, you had more energy.
Yeah, and I was good at taking apart electronics, not exactly fixing them, just taking them apart.
And do you really need to fix them once you take them apart?
And now I'm in negotiations for a series deal based on the book, which is super, super exciting.
Okay, what will that look like?
I'm not allowed to say.
Oh, come on. A little something. Okay, it's based on the book.
Correct.
So based on a true story.
Yeah, it's based on the book. And I really want the opportunity I'll be involved in the writing. And I really want the opportunity to do a TV show that shows addiction how it really is.
Yeah.
That we're not just these destructive monsters, that we're sensitive and needy and that it's not celebrity rehab where everyone's puking in a garbage cans and fighting. And, that's a part of it. But it's like, I don't think I've been watching Patrick Melrose.
I can't watch it. Like I'm trying to watch it. One of my good girlfriends told me about it. She is hooked and I keep trying to watch it. But here, it's so hard for me because of the needles. Like there's
that's only in the beginning. Yeah, when I started it and the first thing was a syringe, my heart was like, no.
Yes.
Were you an IV drug user?
No, I wasn't.
Oh, I was.
I'm such a chicken.
I was, and I still have like like a visceral reaction to needles. And it's been maybe 15 years since I've shot drugs.
Right.
But I have a weird sort of like, it's like excitement and kind of repulsion and nausea at the same time. But my body remembers, I see it and my body goes, and I was like, which is why I stopped watching Intervention, because it just.
That's why I stopped watching Intervention.
It was too.
That's exactly what I said to my
triggering me and
girlfriend.
freaking me out too much.
Yeah, so she told me about that show and I started watching it. Those are the exact
That goes
words.
away. That's in the beginning.
I was like, Shelly, I can't watch this. Is why I stopped watching Intervention.
That's
it's
the
too
beginning.
Graphic.
Later it becomes more about his abusive childhood, and then he becomes an alcoholic.
I love this because this is part of.
Tell me one TV show that really shows addiction the way it is.
Okay.
And addicts. And rehab and psych wards and mental illness, the way it really is.
I did a whole podcast episode about this, about how we're portrayed in media, not only on the addict side, but even on the AA side, like how they put meetings and they make them so lame and boring, right? Like we're the lamest people ever.
Right. We're all like holding hands and like saying weird
but
prayers.
Everybody's really quiet and subdued.
Yeah, like that's real.
And like
not at the meetings I secretary. I'm like, let's go, fuckers.
Right.
If no one raises their hand, I'm picking people. You know what I mean? People are just like, oh my God.
But it is so different. And we
laugh so much. We laugh so much, you know?
But I will say a couple of things. On the tragedy side, I think that Nurse Jackie was brilliantly done.
Agreed.
Because, I mean, it really, on the tragic side, it really showed it for sure. But the second thing is, this is a piece of my own movement, right? I'm so tired of hearing about the tragedy.
Yes.
Right? Like, obviously, addiction is tragic.
Right.
It sucks. It hurts people. People are dying every day.
We know all that.
But here's the thing. There are a lot of us that recover too.
Right.
And I want to start talking about the recovery part.
Right.
I want to start telling people about those of us that get it together and change our lives and have this incredible life, right, outside of drugs and alcohol or gambling and sex and whatever pops up at whatever time.
Right.
So it's so important to me to see that part of it. And I don't know that there has been anything, television or movie necessarily, and obviously I don't know everything, but I don't think there's been much that has really shown a celebration of a recovering person.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Like
and
really
also,
getting it together.
yeah, and also my book is really funny because I had to laugh at some of the stuff I was going through to get through it.
Without a doubt. You have to have a
and
sense
so
of
a lot
humor.
of people who have read it are like, thank you for making me laugh a little bit about it. Thank you for taking the shame out. I feel less broken. I feel less alone. There was stuff that I felt so ashamed at, and you made me laugh about it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's dark laughter, and it's like, but I'm very self-effacing in the book, and it's like, not that I don't take addiction totally seriously. It ruined my life for 20 years. I have epilepsy because of it. I almost died many times. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying if you don't keep your sense of humor during some of these things, you're not going to get through it. And it's like,
it's so true.
And it's like, I mean, a lot of the pieces, I've been a writer for The Fix for 6 years, thefix.com, which is an addiction recovery magazine. And that was sort of the springboard for me to write my book. And my pieces are very irreverent and ruffle feathers. And I say the things that, everyone's thinking that no one dares say. And they tend to be funny too, because it's like, why does this have to, like, the last thing especially newcomers need is like more preachy bullshit. It's like, So I don't know how funny other people's addiction memoirs are, but mine's pretty funny, I have to say.
I think that's so important.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree with that. You have to have a sense of humor.
It so dilutes the shame if you can make, if you can laugh about it.
And it's also like, I talk about this a lot with clients and whoever, but it's like, I have to almost separate my addicted person from my regular person. So like who I was when I was drunk.
Oh my God, right.
That's not the person I really am, right? That's just who I am when I'm drunk. I would never make those choices in my sober state of mind, right? I would never behave that way. I don't know how I talked myself into behaving that way to begin with, but that's not the core of who I am.
But that's the alcoholism that, that it changes us. It really changes us.
For sure.
I did monstrous things that I thought I would never do. And people still think I'm that person. And it's like, I'm not that person. Not just because I'm not using drugs and alcohol anymore, but because I've actually worked on myself to change a lot of those underlying, character defects and, the way that I looked at the world. But it's like, I'm proud to be a recovering addict. Like my addiction fuels my creativity. It's also, addicts, have a rock star quality to them.
For sure.
There's something very charismatic. We're really intense. We can do amazing things. We're really creative and really smart and really sensitive.
We are the coolest people. I always say
agree.
That. I always
so
say that.
It's like, let's celebrate that.
And my alcoholism is, I say this all the time. Everybody's probably already tired of hearing it, but my alcoholism truly is the best thing that ever happened to me.
I agree.
It's the greatest
I feel the same way.
asset of my life. And it feels weird to me how people are embarrassed about it or think it's like, some of the weakness or whatever it is, because it really is just the best thing that ever happened to me.
I agree.
I would not have it any other way.
I agree with you.
Okay. So tell me, what was your first time that you recognized you had a problem? That you recognized like how you were doing it wasn't normal?
I would say I was 24 and I was doing crystal meth and I was just experimenting. I had a pretty late sort of coming of age with drugs and alcohol. I didn't drink till I was 19. I didn't do any hard drugs till I was 24. And right away, so I'm living with gutter punks and skinheads in Lower Haight in San Francisco, right? People who are like total hardcore tweakers, right? And I'm pretty new. I'm this, princess Trustafarian who's like pretending to try and fit in. And I remember someone said, "Oh, I found a quarter." And I thought they meant a quarter bag of drugs and they meant a quarter of change. I go, where? And they go, "Oh my God, calm down. I meant a quarter." Like change with like George Washington on it.
Like
and
coin.
Yeah. And they were like, "You could have a real problem with this." And I was like, whatever,
Yeah.
But I mean, I knew pretty quickly when I did crystal, something clicked for me. And I was like, oh, I need this to be on the planet. I feel normal for the first time. And I wasn't going to give it up without a fight.
But you didn't have that experience with alcohol?
Alcohol made me, I blacked out at 20. Alcohol made me so naked and violent, like I was so immediately out of control on booze. And so I tried to stay away from it because I didn't like being that out of control. I didn't like blacking out. So I liked drugs better because I could be me and still be conscious and have some control, but change my mood. That's what I wanted to do.
Right.
Wanted to change my mood, but I didn't want to remove all inhibitions where I'm like taking my shirt off and punching people and like all that kind of stuff.
And that's the undercurrent, I think, of addiction, period, is that we're trying to change our feelings, trying to change how we feel about whatever.
Of course.
So I was a little bit the opposite. Like I had this really healthy fear of drugs. So I didn't do drugs, right? I did ecstasy one time when I was like 20 years old or something. And this was obviously back in the olden days. When there was only was only like one kind of ecstasy, right? Like everybody had the same stuff. There were, I think now there's like all these variations or something.
I've been out of the loop
so
too.
I took it. First of all, you couldn't drink. So I was already mad. Like my girlfriend gives it to me, I swallow it. And she's like, "Oh, by the way, you can't drink." And I was like, why the fuck would you give me something I can't drink? Like that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Have you met me? And so I was okay with it. Okay, great. We go out, we have our night, and it was all right. It wasn't spectacular. I didn't really care either way, to be honest. But when I got home that night, I was ready to go to bed and go to sleep, and the ecstasy was not.
Interesting.
And it kept me awake for a solid 24 hours.
Well, it's cut with speed.
And
That's why. It's cut with speed.
By the end of that 24 hours, I was so angry at every drug on the planet. I swore I would never do drugs again. Because to me, it was a total loss of control. Like once it was in my body.
Interesting.
Right.
Well, that's why I've never done acid, because I thought I don't want to commit to, 24 hours of hallucinations.
Drugs to me is way too much commitment.
Oh, see, I mean, I loved
drinking. I can back it up. Like if I drank too much, I could stop. I could get something to eat. I could drink some water. Like I can back up on my drink. I mean, not that I ever would have done that. I'm just saying I had the option.
Yeah, that's the opposite. For me, it was like I had no idea what I would do or say or where I'd end up. And I'd always overshoot the mark because I wasn't, waiting. It's like, no. Yeah.
I just didn't like that. That one time when I took that ecstasy, it was totally.
I always threw up too. And it's like, I'd been bulimic when I was 19. And it was like, I don't like this.
Yeah.
And I hated the hangovers. And with crystal or Coke, you just stay high for like days and days and days. You just never calm down. I mean, believe me, I came back to booze around. I came back around to booze again. Like I drank Four Loko, which because I'm really classy. I don't even know if you know what that is.
I don't.
Oh God, it's so trashy. My last relapse, I drank something called Four Loko. People will know what this is. Like if you it has the highest, it's malt liquor. It has the highest alcohol content of anything you get like at a gas station or a 7-Eleven. It's fruit.
Well, that's when you know you're really sophisticated.
It's fruit flavored. It has all different flavors of fruit and it has caffeine.
Oh, well, thank God for that.
And so I would do that and drink those in the morning. And oh my God. I mean, I'm a nightmare when I drink. Truly a nightmare. So I also kind of, with my addiction, I was pretty clear I was an addict from the beginning and I wasn't ashamed of it. And I was just kind of like, oh, I'm a drug addict and I'll probably be a drug addict for the rest of my life.
That's how I felt about being a drunk.
Yeah. I went to treatment a couple of times and it never stuck. And I just was kind of like, I embraced it. Now I embrace sobriety, but at that time I just sort of embraced that. Yeah.
There was a brand in Southern California. I think they were maybe in San Diego, actually. I can't remember, but it was Southern California. And they were alcoholics and they had like beanies and probably t-shirts or something. And I used to proudly wear my beanie that said alcoholics, right? I thought I was so cool. And I did embrace it. I definitely did. I knew that I had a problem pretty early on. And I was like you, where I was kind of a late bloomer getting into alcohol and stuff. But I definitely, I knew I did not do it like other people did.
Oh, yeah.
I knew that I liked it more.
Well, I never did anything like other people did. So that wasn't really a surprise. And then also my drug use got very sort of isolative very quickly. Where it was me in my house by myself, writing a new Bible on crystal meth for, up for, 2 weeks at a time.
Well, we are really appreciative that you took the time to do that.
It's based on Emerson and Nietzsche. I should try it. And I found the mathematical equation for God. I should dig that out of storage. And then also,
Oh, it's so good to reminisce.
And then shooting up. Shooting up is not, sort of, a group activity, really. You can't show up at a party and be like, what's up, guys? I'm here. I brought a 6-pack and some syringes. Let's party. So, I tended to, that's when you're really a drug addict. It's not social at all. It's just you self-medicating and sort of, doing your thing in your house, shooting up for days at a time.
Alone.
Yeah.
Just alone.
Yeah. And like listening to music and like calling people.
My drinking kind of got like that, I guess, toward the end where my tolerance was so crazy how much I could drink. So it was almost always that everybody else had gone home.
Oh, interesting.
You know what I mean? Or I was a bartender for 100 years. So I was always at the bar and we would stay after and drink and then everybody would part and go their separate ways and I would go home and drink more. Oh, so I started to have those times, where it's just like me and my dog, who thank God was very understanding. But yeah, it does. It gets so lonely.
Yeah, it gets really, really lonely.
And then even isolating like from family and stuff like that because I felt so crappy about who I was. I was so ashamed of who I was and what I was doing, even though they didn't know the extent of it. I just felt so crappy about everything. So I didn't want to hang out with them very much. My family are really great people and they're very normal, nice, wonderful Midwest people, and then there's me and I was just, a freaking lunatic right out the gate and always different and doing things different and always more, I just had a little extra flair.
My parents knew pretty much what was going on once I got a huge infection in my face from like bad street drugs in San Francisco. And then I called them and I'm like, oh guys, I'm sick. And then the gig was up. And then, then they were just doing the helicopter parenting and it was like suicide attempts and relapses and 6 rehabs. And so it was like, they were very involved. There was times where they were drug testing me and there was, times where they were sending me to certain therapists or they were sending me to addictionologists. They were trying to fix it every way that they could. And it was really brutal.
It has to be such an awful thing to go through as a parent.
I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
My mother is a recovering alcoholic, so she kind of got it more, but my father, I think he smoked hash once when he was 20. He saw music and he was like, fuck that, never again. He was just kind of a like heavy drinker, like Jewish writer guy.
Yeah.
But he was really, really, really freaked out by my drug use.
Yeah.
And we used to argue a lot and he was scared and it really scared him. And he has not read the full book because there's a lot of really graphic description of drug use. Not in a way that it is triggering to people because I didn't paint it out to be like, it's so glamorous when you're shooting, coke into your neck and having a seizure. But also, in this recovery in the early days while I was going through my divorce, getting sober, I developed a sex addiction, which is not that common for most women, and I chronicle that too. And no father wants to read that about his kid. So his girlfriend read him the parts that didn't have to do with sort of the graphic drug use, the graphic sex stuff. Even though my dad had written porn when he was in his 60s. I mean, when he was in the 60s. Let's go back. Written porn in the 60s. But he said it was made up stories. He goes, my shit was made up. Yours is true. That's the difference. And I was like, okay. So I was like, I thought it gave me some license as a pornographer's daughter.
Okay. So 2 questions. One, I'm really into this talking about how our addiction or even compulsions have cropped up in other ways, right? Because obviously just because I quit drinking doesn't mean I am no longer an addictive, compulsive person, course, right? Yes. And then the second thing is, how are your family relationships now?
My family relationships now are great. My parents are extraordinarily proud. I have 5.5 years sober. They're thrilled I wrote a book. The book's helping a lot of people. I get wonderful messages that make me cry. And to have taken 20 years of pain and degradation and humiliation and to have made it into something that makes people laugh and gives them hope is just like, I mean, what beats that? Nothing.
I love that.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's so inspirational too.
So
because I think so many of us as addicts, like we have the most incredible and phenomenal stories and we're survivors.
Yeah.
Like that's
big
the
time.
truth. We are survivors and there's so much to share.
And the book is very raw. It's really honest. I mean, there's stuff where I was like, I do not want to put this on the page. And I was like, that's exactly what you need to put on the page because someone's going to read it and go, oh my God, me too. Like I did the same thing.
What about other
my mother is suffering from some ill health now. I wouldn't call it dementia, but I guess the beginnings, she's losing her memory and she broke her hip and she is in a wheelchair and she's in an assisted living. So I'm power of attorney and handling all her affairs, which is like the last thing an addict wants. Like I don't even know how to do my own checkbook and now I've got to do all her own finances. It's like I'm avoiding responsibility my whole life. That was what being an addict was. And the universe was like, here, bitch, here's some responsibility. Yeah. You get to be the mom to your mom. Enjoy, And
full circle.
Yeah, my father's great. He's super proud. He's super excited. In terms of how it's cropped up, well, I had an eating disorder prior to me ever drinking or doing drugs. And to me, they're all the same. Eating disorders, gambling, sex addiction. I told you I just quit vaping a month ago. And it's like, I have a line in my book where it's like, oh, I realized sort of the formula. I put something in my body and I changed my feelings. And it doesn't matter if it's a Xanax or a donut or a dick. I was exactly like, you know what I mean? Yeah. So for me, what cropped up, I wish the exercise addiction, but that's been more hard.
Oh my God, I say that all the time. I'm like, that's the one I can't get to stick. And I exercise and I like going to the gym.
And I get like the endorphin rush, but I'm not like, oh God, caffeine and nicotine. But the sex and love stuff has been the stuff that's been the hardest to sort of wrangle in sobriety.
Yeah.
I went through a breakup a year ago and instead of fucking my way through it, which is what I would have normally done, I have been totally celibate and not dated and just concentrated on myself for this last year.
Beautiful.
Yeah, which is incredible.
Yeah.
And just was
what
like closed for renovation, and just worked on myself and started to work out and quit vaping and started, instead of self-destructing or throwing myself into another relationship, it was like, okay, let's really work on ourselves and our career.
Yeah, because you're right. All those other things, they are their own self-medication.
Of course.
And
it's a way to keep from, when I was fucking everyone.
It's a way to numb.
Yeah. When I was going through my divorce and my criminal trial, it's because I didn't want to feel those feelings. And, you eventually have to feel those feelings.
Yeah.
And it just prolonged, the grief.
Yeah.
So it's like you got to cry it out. You got to feel your feelings, and
you have
sucks.
to work through it. You can't get through it without getting through it.
The only way out is through, and it blows. You know what I mean? We don't like feeling our feelings, and it's like that's the only way. And it's like they will not kill you, and that was something it took me a really long time to figure out. It was like, okay, I'm going to cry and cry and cry and feel like I want to die and feel like I want to put a fucking needle in my eye, and but it's like I will get through this, and it will pass. Yeah. Feelings pass. Everything passes. Yeah. And you don't have to act on it. And
I
it
remember
took me
my
20
sponsor
years.
saying to me, he was like, just remember that your bad feelings will pass just like your good ones do.
My sponsor too.
Yeah. Like none of that stuff comes and stays. Okay, sorry if you guys hear the crazy sound in the background. We are in the heart of Hollywood, so we've got traffic noise and all that good stuff. So that'll be a part of the podcast too.
So that's been something else. And I did go to some programs for that, and it's in the book, and I make fun of it, SLAW and SAA and all that kind of stuff. And but my experience has been that when you work on your core issues, sort of all of those things fall away.
Absolutely. So I've been exploring I guess I've been coming to some realizations the last few years, but really thinking about it a lot in the last year or so, is food addiction stuff. Because I definitely have food addiction for sure. And I'm just trying to figure it all out. And, what does that mean? And what do I do? And all that good stuff. But it's funny because sometimes you say it to people and they'll kind of laugh, they don't think it's a real thing or it's not a real addiction, right? Because you're not going to die from it, I guess, or it's going to take a long time for you to die from it. But it's so crazy to me because I have the same shame and guilt and all those things. I beat myself up, just from eating stuff that I know I shouldn't eat and doing it more than I want to do it. You know what I mean? Like I can't say eating disorder because I haven't struggled with that, but I'm an emotional eater.
Right.
I definitely overeat. I definitely eat for the feelings of eating. You know what I mean? Like there is a satisfaction and a pleasure.
Is there something specific that you eat? Do you eat sugar or starch?
Well, I'm huge sugar.
Because that changes your brain chemistry.
Yeah, right.
Of course.
Yeah,
and the problem with sex addiction or food addiction is that you have to find a way to moderate it. You can't just be abstinent. And that's the difficulty. You can't just not eat. Right. You can't just, you can, I guess you can not have sex or not date, but it's like,
Yeah, there's no abstinence.
No. So it's much more of a struggle to find that middle ground,
Yeah. Yeah. Imagine if you tried to tell me to moderate my tequila intake. Like that's not happening.
Right.
But I have to do that. And I always say this too with eating and gambling for sure. It's like, because your drug of choice is a part of your daily life when you have those things, right? Because you're exactly right. I can't just not eat.
Right.
I have to eat.
No, of course.
So and with gambling, like money, you can't function in life without having some money in some
or shopping
form,
or whatever. You have to shop a little. Yeah. So those things are more, gambling, I guess you could, not go to Vegas. You could not gamble online. I never had gambling addiction. That's intermittent reinforcement. It's like, and I always make this joke, which is like, if I'm going to pay for something, if I'm going to spend money, I want to know I'm going to get, drugs or get high. You know what I mean? I don't want to maybe get drugs, maybe get high. That's like gambling. Like maybe you win or maybe you're like, no.
But the probability
that's
is
the
not
Jew in me. I don't like that. And also I'm bad at it. So I never won enough for me to be like, ooh, it really hooked me.
I just like my money in my pocket more than I like it in their pocket. You know what I mean? Like I say the same thing about like speeding tickets or something. Like I don't speed because I like to have my money more than I like for the police to have my money.
Oh, the police. We were just talking about that yesterday.
Oh, the fears that never go away.
I was asking people, I was like, so it's been, 7 years since I was arrested, and I see a cop and my heart stops. I'm like, ah! I'm like, when does that go away? People are like, never.
Yeah, I don't think it ever goes away.
God.
Like I do now, I do have a relief, right? Like if I see a cop behind me, I don't have to panic.
Right.
But listen, I don't want to, I do go out of my way to make sure I don't have contact with those people too.
Those people. Those people. I told you I got asked to speak I got asked to speak to quote the brass, and I was like, I'm scared.
Yeah, and I told you I did crisis intervention training, and the first time I did it for the police department, I literally thanked the entire room for letting me leave. And I did. I felt like I was like, man, I better get my stuff and get out of here because somebody's gonna like Google my record or something. Like I don't even know, but they're gonna change their mind and they're not gonna let me leave. Like get my shit and go. Yeah, it's scary. So what would you say for you was your lowest moment in your sobriety? Not even in your drinking. What is your lowest moment in your sobriety? Because that's when it really matters, right? Like I have to get through those things.
I'd say the lowest moment in my sobriety would have to be when my ex-boyfriend left and moved out last year, a couple months before the book was going to be released. And it felt sort of very sudden and out of the blue. Like I didn't really, we had issues, but who doesn't have issues? And it kind of felt very sort of like sudden. Yeah. And heartbreak had always made me use. And so my first thought was like, I got to kill myself. Because that was another thing I'd done when someone would leave me, or I would, slit my wrists and go, look what you did to me, which is so like borderline and manipulative. And and then my second thought was like, I got to use. The pain was so intense. And I did neither, and I got through it. And
so when you thought about using, were you thinking about using like in almost like a vengeful way, like a revenge?
No.
Were you really wanting to stop the feeling?
I just was like, this pain is so great. Okay. I mean, I lost 10 pounds. I started smoking again. I cried every day. I mean, people in my entire building just heard me wailing through the walls. And heartbreak's brutal.
Heartbreak is brutal. It's the worst
Oh, it's the worst pain ever. Yeah. And it's like kicks in all your childhood stuff and attachment and abandonment and self-esteem and sexuality and fears of being alone. I mean, it's just it just triggers all of it,
attachment issues, codependence.
Yeah. Brutal. Everything. It just just pushed all the buttons at once. And I got through that. And I was also really stressed because it was like right before the book was coming out. And it was, I felt really alone and stressed. And so I got through that. And that was probably the lowest point. One of the most difficult things in this sobriety has also been, the thing with my mom becoming ill and taking on that responsibility. And, because I've always been the baby. I've always been the one that they took care of, and I was the one they were concerned about. And now the roles have switched. Yeah. And being responsible. I mean, I'm glad that I'm in a place where I'm sober and I can be responsible and can handle things for her. But it's a very new experience, and I definitely feel like I've sort of lost a parent that I can use as a resource and go to with her. Like I'm sort of like having to handle all her stuff.
So what is your what are you doing through even through your breakup, but now even with the situation with your mom? Like what are the things you're doing to continue to nurture your sober part? Like I always say, I have to make sure on a daily basis that I'm feeding my sober part.
Right.
So that it stays really big and strong. Right. So when I'm faced with a challenge of any sort, whatever that might be, my sober part has to be strong enough to fight off my addicted part. You know what I mean? So what are the things you're doing now to nourish your sober self?
I go to meetings. As I told you before, I don't really believe in anonymity. I think that that's very outdated, and I think it's actually harmful to recovery and the stigma of recovery and addiction. I think, now that we have Celebrity Rehab and Dr. Drew and Intervention and Sober House and blah, blah, it's like...
The word is out.
Yeah, it's like, let's get real. It's not the 30s anymore. There are paparazzi outside AA meetings. If you say you're in recovery, people are going to assume probably 12-step. Like it's, there's movies about it. There's, people are in meetings, even in Love, Judd Apatow's show, she's in slaw and AA. It's like, let's get real. Right. And it's like, so people say, well, if you relapse, it says that AA doesn't work. It's like, really? If you have cancer and you get chemo, does that mean, and you still die, do people think chemo doesn't work? Right. It's like AA doesn't work for everyone. Guess what? Newsflash.
No, listen, here's what I say. AA works just fine. AA is around the globe every day, and millions of people are sober in AA every day. AA is just fine. Sometimes we, as addicted people, don't work. I think that's really the issue. AA stays the same no matter what.
Right. But I also think it's not a one size fits all thing. I think for some people, maybe, they can do harm reduction. Maybe they do smart recovery or refuge recovery or cognitive, whatever works for you. It's cool. I'm not a fundamentalist.
But I wonder too, why is it okay for us to be so open about addiction and the tragedy of addiction and the disgustingness of addiction, right? It's okay to be so open about all of that stuff, but then we want to clam up when it comes to our recovery. And that's the part I want to talk about more than anything.
I agree with you. I think that's what breaks the stigma.
Cool.
That's what's going to break the stigma, is more people coming forward and going, I recovered. And giving people hope, more so than changing it to substance use disorder. That makes me crazy. It's like, let's polish it up and make it this specific science sounding name. Yeah. It's like, I don't want to be censored or told how I get to tell my story.
Right.
And I'm sorry, AIDS had a super scientific sounding name, and that didn't keep people from being freaked out about it until when? Until AIDS Walk, AIDS Ride, people fucking came out. And also, it wasn't a death sentence anymore.
Right.
That's when all of a sudden the stigma went down.
Yeah.
Not changing the name.
Yeah.
The
name change is interesting to me.
Yeah. I wrote an article about it for The Fix. It makes me so.
Oh, you did?
It makes me so angry because I've gotten some pushback because my book is my book has all the words that they want to ban: dirty, clean, junkie. Right. And for me, it's empowering to just own it. Yeah, I was a junkie.
Yeah. I always just say addicted. That's what I say.
But you work more in the industry. I don't.
Yeah.
So absolutely. I don't have to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it's like I don't like other, recovering addicts going, "Oh, you can't use that language to describe your experience." It's like, "Oh, really?"
Yeah. Well, I don't know that I feel like substance use disorder really describes me either. Like, I don't even think that sounds
well, cool. It also sounds much less lethal. And it's like,
Oh, yeah, I hadn't thought about that.
People are dying.
I just think, I'm addicted. I'm an addicted person. I can be addicted to almost anything. I have to be mindful of it always. I have to be diligent about my recovery and my mental health.
I'm not saying language isn't powerful. I'm not saying substance use disorder to get, insurance or for legal purposes is not right. But when we're talking one ex-addict to another, let's get real. It's like if someone needs to be like, I was a diehard dope fiend, remember where they came from? Let them.
Yeah.
It's none of your business.
Right.
I mean, other people policing my language, so.
And words are powerful, but I do feel like I should get to choose my own.
Yeah, it's your experience. And a lot of people were like, I bought your book because it said junkie. My Fair Girl with Substance Use Disorder hardly would have been quite as, fabulous of a title. Can you imagine? People would be like,
that's catchy.
Yeah, right. I mean, I'm not saying I don't understand, breaking the stigma, but I don't think that shying away from the words is the way to break the stigma. I just don't.
Yeah.
I'm more of the thing.
I'm not even sure that I understand. I probably need to do a little reading on this. I'm not even sure that I understand what the agenda is with the switch.
To make people view it differently. Because if you were clean now, you were dirty before and that kind of stuff. And to, make people see it as a medical disorder, mostly, more properly. But it's like,
it's more of a diagnostic.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know. I'm more of sort of like, the gay pride, just own it. Own it. And then no one has anything on you.
Right.
You're not shying away from it. And you're not going, I have substance use disorder. And it's like, so there's just no, and there was a time when I was proud of my drug use. I had track marks all over my neck and all over my arms. And boy, did I think I was a fucking badass.
Yeah.
Yeah,
your battle scars.
I thought I was just the coolest motherfucker, you know?
It's so funny too. Like I was the same way, like with how much I could drink.
Of course.
You know, it was always like bragging about how much I could drink. And I think about it now and I'm like, oh my God, that's disgusting.
And your liver is like, Angela, please.
I think my liver moved out. I think it left. I think it went to Hawaii and relaxed until I started behaving and then it came back. But yeah, I did. It was a badge of honor.
Of course.
And the same thing with legal stuff too. I think when I was
that's one of the problems also of AA is the flipping of the shame, which is the worse your bottom, the fucking cooler you are.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I feel like that's chilled out quite a bit.
That I agree with you.
Yeah.
I agree with you, but I think that there's been a lot of people and who are like, I just drank, got a DUI. You shot, heroin in your dick. Do I belong here? They feel like maybe they need to do more, whatever. Right. But then I also
like their bottom wasn't low enough.
Yeah, all that kind of shit. Yeah. And it's like, I'm not saying have a really low bottom. Like, right. I wish I had gotten it sooner.
Yeah.
But I also have people who write to me and they're like, I'm in AA and like in different parts of the country and they're mostly like the IV drug users and they're like, I feel really dirty and like I don't belong. And I'm like, fuck that.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want to be queen of the fucking drunks and drug? Who cares what those people think? And I'm like, you absolutely belong there. Yeah. I mean, again, it's all the same thing to me. I can swap it out. I started drinking because I didn't know where to get syringes when I relapsed. It had been too long. I got into Oxy, which I didn't even really like. For a shoulder injury, I started abusing it. I didn't even really like it. Didn't matter. I felt different. Made me feel different. And that's all I cared about.
And food was there before any of that stuff.
Yeah. As soon as that was my first reaction to like a sexual trauma in college. I became anorexic and bulimic for 5 years. And it was gnarly and it was a way to control feelings.
Right.
And I don't know that. And then I found, drugs and alcohol. I was like, well, this is much more fun than an hour on the Stairmaster and eating crackers. Hello. Wait a second.
It is much faster.
Right?
All right. Last question. I ask everybody this question. It is my all-time favorite. What is your favorite thing about being a sober person?
God, that's such a hard question. Do people just like come out with an answer?
So mine is...
You're like, I'll give you a hint, Amy.
I'll give you a hint. So mine is, I like, of course, because I'm a control freak. So,
oh, interesting.
I like that I have this control sort of over my destiny, right? In my sobriety that I never had in my drinking days because I was so out of control, right? So I was either drunk or hungover. Those were the only two stages of my life. Right. And when I was drunk, obviously I was not in any condition to make life choices. And when I was hungover, I really wasn't in any condition to make life choices. Right. But I just was so like, yeah, whatever, that's good. I don't care. Like I never got to put any conscious energy into creating my life to be what I wanted it to be. But in my sobriety, I get to really map it out, right? Like I know the person I want to be. I know the parts of myself I want to work on. I know what I want my life to look like. And then I can do that on a daily basis. You know what I mean?
You're not in reaction and like cleaning up crises and blah, blah, blah.
Right. I get to choose.
I mean, I think part of it is I love the fellowship. I love the connection. I love being a survivor.
Yes. And I believe that addicted people, I believe we connect with one another unlike we connect with
I completely agree with you. And it's like, I think that, I'm incredibly proud of my recovery. It's the hardest thing I ever did over and over and over again. You know what I mean? I had quite a few relapses. And I like who I am today. Like, I actually like myself.
Yes.
I've become a person that I like. I've become a person who is reliable, who is loving, who thinks about other people, who, not someone who everyone is like, hey, are you okay? Or are you still alive? Checking on. And it's like, and
I was a real schmuck too. You know what I mean?
Oh, the good Jew, Yiddish word.
I was really bad.
Oh, I was a total asshole. Yeah, I was a total asshole.
Really bad to
Yeah, I was a
people.
nightmare.
And I was a liar.
Yeah, I was a total nightmare. I was a total nightmare. And I think that also I've been so much more productive and so much more of a helpful member of society. And like you said, I felt like such a victim when I was in my addiction. And I just was like, why is all this happening to me? And I didn't really understand. I felt like I was, I just was like a victim. And it was like, I didn't realize,
I didn't realize all those
that it was all my creation.
Right, that I created
so
it,
that was the big thing, was like, oh, well, if a pattern's following you, dumb fuck, you're creating it. And if you change, your whole life changes. Right. And it was like things that I felt I was caught in, I've changed. And that's through program, which I really believe, you can be like, ooh, creepy God, whatever. But it's like, it's cognitive behavioral therapy. It's acting yourself in a right, it's acting yourself in a right thinking. So it's doing the same thing over and over and over and over again, contrary to your feelings, which always defined my whole life and drove every action I took, which, they change all the time. And it's like, and creating a new neural pathway. So this is my go-to now. Yeah. Someone who picks up the phone, someone who emails right back, someone who da-da-da. No, I don't really make my bed, but you know what I'm saying? Like vacuums.
But some people do.
Yeah. So if you wanted to, messy bed, I got it. Someone who, is on top of it. Yeah. And, I wasn't that person before and never thought I could be. I was like, oh, well, this is who I am.
That's
and I'm
what
stuck
I was
in
gonna
it.
add.
It's
That's
like you can recreate yourself and become that person. And that's your default.
Yeah. I get to be
whoever the fuck you want.
A person that I never even thought I was capable of.
Absolutely.
Being. Yeah. And that's beautiful.
Who I dreamt maybe I could be one day. Maybe. If they did a brain transplant.
Right.
And put me on like a lot of medications.
I need a life transplant. And then maybe I would be.
Yeah, and it's like you don't really see it in yourself, and then you run into people who haven't seen you, and they're like, "Oh my God, you're a totally different person."
But that's one of the beautiful things I think too. For me, because addiction is my business too, but also in AA, it's like that's one of the greatest things about it is where you get to watch somebody come in new, where we're so frazzled, and like I remember when I walked in the rooms. Like I had a car accident, like my face was all busted up. I was a hot mess, and I strolled right in and you get to watch people like really get it together.
Yeah, it's amazing.
You get to watch people's anxiety go down. You get to watch people get comfortable in their own skin. And
you can see people go from homelessness to being CEOs. It's fucking incredible.
Yeah. There's people, my home group is still the same today as it was in my beginning. And there are people in those rooms every day that literally saw me in my first days in that group. Like they have watched my entire transformation over the course of 12 years now. And it's phenomenal. And now I get to do that too in my sober living houses or in AA. Cool. It's so amazing. Yeah. There's no greater thing that will fuel me to continue doing everything I do than getting to see that transformation.
Oh, I was a total hot mess. I've been arrested for felony domestic violence. I was sweeping the streets. I was penniless on Medi-Cal disability. I got into sober living, and now I have 5.5 years, and I'm an author and blah blah.
Right.
And
published author.
And it's like, and when the house manager, who's still a friend of mine, sees me take a cake or whatever, she just cries. She's just so blown away. She saw me through the sex addiction. She saw me through, I had a seizure, at the house. I mean, she just saw me through like a zillion bad relationship choices. Oh my God.
So I got to have that experience with my probation officer. Oddly enough, but, where obviously he saw me, he got me after. Technically, I was already sober, but it was in the very first day.
Yeah.
So I was still a hot mess. You know what I mean? But he got to see me throughout the time I was on probation with him. He got to see me stay sober and do it.
So cool.
And I'm sure from his perspective, I should call him and ask him to do a podcast. I'm sure from his perspective, it was probably really cool to watch.
I'm sure.
And then I ran
into rare
him.
Probably too.
And rare for sure. And then I ran into him years later.
Oh my God.
We had clients in common. So I had a client in
That's
my
incredible.
private practice, and he was their probation officer. So he got to see me years later, still having it together.
That's
still
amazing.
thriving. Amazing. It's so cool.
Yeah, one of the coolest letters I got was from a probation officer, and he was just like,
Yeah, I remember
he
you
was
saying
like,
this.
yeah, and he was like, your book is the starkest, most accurate depiction of addiction I've ever read. And he was like, I want to just say that it helped me understand addiction more personally and professionally than 23 years on the job. And I was just like, holy
That's incredible.
moly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I never thought it could affect people like that. I thought this was a book for sort of addicts and,
Right.
you know, people in recovery and their family, maybe, or people who like to read
Right.
a car wreck. But it's like the fact that it's,
That's
I
so
mean,
good.
it was my dream to be like, here's a ride inside our heads so you can understand.
Yeah, that's one of the things I say about the podcast. I'm like, this is an inside view of what it's like
You
to
know.
live with addiction,
Yeah.
survive addiction. And
Yeah.
because we do have a different way of thinking. I think a lot of times I always talk about the personality of an addicted
right.
person. And we do, but that's why we connect
Yeah,
so
the obsession,
well,
the
too.
rumination,
Yeah,
the future tripping. Yeah.
We're all those things. Most of us have some anxiety and some depression.
Yeah, of course.
And There's so many
Absolutely.
similarities regardless of our details, regardless of our
Absolutely.
backgrounds, regardless of what we look like.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're so similar.
Yeah, and that's what's so cool when you share with other people and they're just like, they have the exact same thoughts. You just laugh because you're just like, oh my God.
I know. I always
identify.
say with addicted people, I can share my stories and we all laugh and think it's really fantastic. With non-addicted people, I share my stories and they want to have me arrested.
Yeah, they're like horrified.
Horrified,
Oh yeah, they're just like, oh my God, that's not funny at
And
all.
probably feeling a
I
lot of
know.
pity for my mom. You know, they're like, oh my God, you did what? And I'm like, oh yeah, that was just the beginning.
Totally.
Amy, thank you so much for doing this with me.
Thank
Such
you.
a pleasure
Thank you
to
for
meet
having
you.
yes.
And thank you for being so open about your story. I am for sure getting your book on Audible.
I can't wait to hear what you
as soon as I
think.
leave. Again, for everybody out there, it's My Fair Junkie, a memoir of getting dirty and staying clean. And I will do a little review. I read so many books. So
Great.
I'm going to start doing some book stuff.
Cool.
Thank you so much. And hopefully we will do this again.
Sounds great.
You've reached the end of another great episode of the Addiction Unlimited podcast. Candid and honest conversation about addiction and recovery. Be sure to visit us at addictionunlimited.com to join the conversation and access show notes and links to everything we talked about. Love this episode? Please take 30 seconds to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes to help us improve and give you the information you want. Thanks for listening. See you next week.